Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections here for Friday, March 13th. Before getting to today's play of the day, quick recap and just a brief update on what happened since the last video I made. I made out a couple videos yesterday, one about college basketball, the other one about the coronavirus and how it pretty much shut down every sport, along with what that would lead to the future of this channel. Now, a lot has changed since then. You had Premier League get shut down, golf got shut down, NASCAR got shut down, Bellator got shut down, boxing got shut down. You've had a lot of sports that have just completely been, just all the action has ceased. But you still have some Australian soccer, you still have some cricket, you got darts, you got a bunch of random sports, esports. But there is still UFC going on tomorrow. Shockingly, after Dana White apparently talked to President Trump and they decided to keep it in Brazil on Saturday, March 14th. So I'm not really going to argue about it. Either or, we do have some MMA matchups coming up this weekend, and we'll be focusing on one of those for play of the day, and that matchup will be taking place tomorrow. And the matchup we're going to be looking at is going to be between David Dvorak and Bruno Silva, and we like the underdog here with David Dvorak on the money line, which is available at plus 106 on FanDuel. I'm also going to be looking into, I'm actually going to be giving this out as well for just to win one unit. It's going to be on Dvorak to win by knockout, which is available at plus 340 on FanDuel as well. I like both those lines. I think there's a lot of value on it, and we're going to be giving those out. So it's going to be one unit on Dvorak to win, and 1/3 of a unit on Dvorak to win by knockout, and both those should pay out about roughly 1 unit to 1.06 units. There are a couple reasons why I like Dvorak in this spot. First of all, he's a relative unknown because this will be his first UFC fight. However, I just believe he's the significantly better fighter in this actual matchup. He's fighting out of the Czech Republic, and if you've looked at his recent results, he has completely just destroyed every league he's been in. He's won each of his last 13 fights, and it is worth mentioning that the last fight that he was in that entered the third round was February 18th, 2012, which means that for the last roughly 8 years, every fight he's been in has ended in either the first or the second round, and he's won each of his last 13 fights. This guy has won 8 fights by knockout, 7 by submission, and 2 by decision. This guy is just an absolute beast, and I think he should be able to take care of Bruno Silva in this one. Silva is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he will be fighting in his home country of Brazil. However, he has very limited UFC experience. He has more experience than Dvorak, who has never fought in the UFC before. But Silva, despite being a Brazilian black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, ended up getting submitted in the third round of his UFC debut against Khalid Taha. So Silva's really just not that impressive if you've looked at his recent results. In his last 5 fights, he's 2-2-1. Really just not that great. Silva also is going to be dealing with a slight height disadvantage here. Dvorak has 1 inch of height, and he's got 3 inches of reach, and I think that will definitely help Dvorak potentially finish this fight early on. If you've looked at Silva, though, because he's a Brazilian black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, he will look to win by submission, as he will look to try to take it to the ground and try to sit on Dvorak for as long as possible. However, Dvorak has 7 submission wins and 0 submission losses, so I do think that Dvorak's defense on the ground should be good enough to help get him by. Meanwhile, that's the same reason why I think Dvorak will win by knockout instead of submission, because of the fact that Bruno, even though he lost by submission in his last fight, I think that was mostly due to fatigue. Silva is still very capable of reversing any type of poor situation on the ground due to his elite, resume with regard to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I do think that Dvorak will look to try to keep it off the ground as much as possible, or potentially set him up for some ground and pound. But I do think Dvorak does have a serious advantage in the stand-up with the inch height advantage as well as the 3-inch reach advantage, and I do think that Dvorak should be able to get the job done. If you've looked at if you've actually looked at Dvorak's fights on Sherdog, this is just an absolute destruction of just who he's gone up against. Of course, it's weaker competition, but at the same point, if you just look at this, you can't run through people like this and not expect me to think that you're the better fighter here. I think that Silva is currently the favorite because of the fact that it's in his backyard, but you also have to remember that the fans will not be in attendance because of the coronavirus. So even though he is in Brazil and he might have some comfort, he might be a little bit more comfortable because of just training in his home country. There will be no fan support, and I do think that will help Dvorak in this spot. But it's also worth mentioning that Dvorak is taking this fight on short notice, which could be a reason why this line is just high on Dvorak. But overall, people always think of fighters taking a fight on short notice as being just a con against the fighter who's doing it. It's also a con against the fighter who's going to be facing him, especially since Dvorak has never fought in the UFC. It's going to be tough for Silva to actually find footage of Dvorak to actually, try to game plan something for him. He might figure something out, but Dvorak at the same point has won all of his fights pretty much by knockout or submission in the first 2 rounds. He's been fighting in pretty much the Czech Republic and areas of Europe. And on a short preparation, I think Silva will be a little bit overwhelmed by the brute strength and all-around fighting ability of Dvorak. I just think Dvorak's the better fighter here. And for that reason, I think that there is a lot of value on him to win this fight outright. You have seen some line movement offshore in favor of Dvorak. He originally opened up at -110 or roughly -115. He's currently being pushed around. Silva opened up at -120. He's down to roughly -110, -105 on some of the offshore books. I think this line will continue to move in favor of Dvorak as he is the better fighter here. The only way that I see Silva actually winning this fight is by decision, and I think that Dvorak could win this fight in a variety of ways. He could win by knockout, he could win by decision, he could even hypothetically win by submission. I doubt it though, but Dvorak does have the significant advantage in the stand-up, and I think he will be able to take care of business. So for me, once again, the 2 plays of the day are going to be 1 full unit on Dvorak moneyline at +106 on FanDuel, and we're going to put a third of a unit on Dvorak to win by knockout, which is available at +340 on FanDuel. Other than that, though, I'm going to continue with the UFC coverage tomorrow with another play of the day. That's good for the installment of Scott's Selections here for Friday, March 13th. Good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.